So for this one, this is going to be a mobility and activation session, and we're going to be focusing on the hips. So the first thing that we're going to do is work on a little bit of the hamstrings, and then we're going to work on a bit on the front of the hip, and then we're going to do the activation. So all you're going to need for this is a ball and a chair. It usually makes it easier than pretty much anything else that you could do. So we'll start with that. And what that looks like is you just sitting down on your chair, and you're going to start with the ball up high and on one side, and you're going to zigzag it down as we're extending the leg. And yeah, I've got like some pretty serious socks on because I'm cold. So just start by popping it under there and just extending your leg. You can like see how it feels, pointed versus flexed, and we're just going to slowly work our way down the hamstring. And you want to start actually like quite high, so you can sort of like, because that's often an area on the inner side, it would be near the adductor, on the outer side probably close to the glute, and we're just going to keep moving it down. And so later on, when we're doing our activation, we'll have a little bit more to work with, because we will have done this with our hamstrings, and that's usually how these things go, is that rolling's probably the most effective if you are doing it before you do something else, because then you get to utilize your capacity and your greater mobility in doing something, and that creates then an adaptation, rather than doing it and it feeling good for a couple of days, but then it probably going back to how it normally is. And so you're just going to keep moving that ball down, and you can, if somewhere feels particularly tight, you might like to stay there a little bit longer, but just keep moving. And I'm sort of feeling it probably a bit more on the outside than on the inside today, and it's just good to sort of get a sense of where it is sensitive for you, because then it can also help you think about maybe doing other things that are going to help you out. And sometimes too, you'll get to the end and you kind of want to go in a little bit more to here, but you don't have quite enough room, so you can always just sort of move yourself around. And that was mainly so you could see where my legs were anyway. So we are going to be finishing up on this side in a minute and doing the other side. But if you want to go for longer, if you feel like there's a bit more to be worked on there, you can always pause. So now we're just going to go with actually I might just stay this way. Go with the other side and just start up really nice and high, and just extend the leg nice and slowly. You don't want anything that's super painful. So if you're finding this a little bit too much, then you could try using like a more sort of squishy ball, and just slowly keep moving down the leg. And you can sort of like pause in spots where you feel like you need it to. And it can be quite a good one, because the hamstrings can be sort of like quite tough to roll in other ways, and sometimes it's also hard to kind of get the amount of pressure that you want on them, because they can be tough little cookies at the best of times. So this can be quite a nice thing to do if you have time before you go for a run as well, or it can also be something that you might do before doing strength training, or before doing another session that you're doing, anything like that. It's quite nice to do before, and you'll probably find if you are doing it before a run, then your warm-up time is probably going to be significantly less. And it's just going to also, particularly if you're doing anything where there's any sort of strides involved or faster running, it's going to be, I've just noticed here on this side there's something that's pretty tight, so I'm just going to work on that for a little bit. But we're nearly done, and we're going to be moving on to the front of the hips and just releasing through there, because it's often an area that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. So we'll finish up there, and I will move my chair. And for the next bit, we're going to hop down on our mat. And with this, what you want to feel is like where the front of your hip bone is here, and you want the ball to be just sitting right in there and not getting too far sort of over. It's just all on this side. So we're going to do each side. So we'll just get down to the mat, and I will just move this camera a little bit so we can see. So we'll just pop it in there, and you can sort of see what is going to work best for you. You can stay in one spot, you can move back and forth, but you really want to stay on that side near the bone, and just essentially you're just wiggling around, finding places that might be tight. And one of the benefits with this is that you can, with your arms, you can just sort of control how much pressure you're going to put into it. And it can also be an area that does get quite tight, particularly with quicker sessions. So after your it can be a good thing to sort of, and it's just really hard to stretch out, so it can be a good thing to focus on the days when you're doing those sorts of sessions. And you can go, you know, like side to side, up and down, just whatever is feeling okay for you. And we will just pop it over to the other side. And you might find that one side is a little bit less forgiving than the other side, which is totally fine. And it can also just help if your hip flexors are tight. This sort of can help with that as well. And it's just one of those things that's often neglected. So it is something to sort of work into the rolling routine if you haven't done it before, and you usually know if you're in the right spot, because it can feel pretty tight in there. One thing, of course, to be aware of is if you in your cycle with your period, then it's probably not something that you want to do. It can get pretty sensitive. So that is us for the rolling portion. Now we're going to come up here against the wall, and we are going to do our activation portion. So I'll roll that ball away. Now for this, you might find that it's a bit tough going straight onto the wall. So what you can do is, if you want, is get your mat and put your mat halfway up the wall. But in the interest of doing this, I'm just going to do it on the wall, and we're going to do a few sets of this. So we're going to get up into our couch stretch position here. Now, if this is aggressive for you, feel free to put your hands down here. But for this, I'm just going to stay up here. And what we're going to do is just going to push the foot back into the wall for 20 seconds, and then we are going to have a little rest, and then we're going to attempt to pull our foot off the wall. It's not going to go anywhere at all, but then just to activate the hamstring. So the first thing, I'm going to time this, because otherwise if it's in my head, 20 seconds seems a lot different. So from now, we're just going to start pushing back into the wall, and you want to start with something that feels moderate, you know, like sort of like aiming for about 60% or so. And we are at around 15 seconds, so we've got 5 to go, and you might want to just ramp it up now a little bit. And then just a bit of a relax. And then what we're going to do for 10 seconds is we're going to try and pull our foot off the wall, and it's going to activate our hamstring. So we'll go now. So just put all of your attention into that hamstring, and you can go all out pretty much here, and then we're going to have like a little rest. I find, particularly in the beginning, you might want to come out of that for just a little bit, just to give it a little rest before going again. So we'll go back and we'll do another one, and it's just going to be the same thing. So now we're pushing into the wall for 20 seconds. Don't forget to breathe. And we're really ramping that up now, so it's getting up to more like 90%. And now we're going to have a little rest, and then we are going to now start pulling it off the wall and activating that hamstring. And you can have, this can be 100% because it's only going to be 10 seconds, and then you can relax. And you can just sort of, sometimes that ankle can get a little bit tight, so you can just sort of move it around, that kind of thing. And then we will do the other side now, and same thing, like you can be on all fours if you're not quite ready to sit up with it. And we will start pushing back into the wall. With that, try to stay as upright as you can as you're pushing into the wall. Keep breathing, and we've got about 10 seconds to go. You can have a little rest before we go and do the hamstring part. And now we're going to pull it off the wall, or try to. Just put all of your focus on that hamstring. And rest. So you can come out of that, give your ankle a little bit of moving, and then we'll go and we'll do one more. And if you are doing this, you might like to do 5 on each side rather than 2. So you can just sort of do that on your own time, but I'm just going to get back into position here. And I'm actually going to grab, this knee is not overly happy now. So probably should have used the mat, but we'll just get some padding there and be fine. All right. So we are going to go push into the wall. Just allow that to really open up the hip. And now be at about 80%. And about 90. And that's done. We have a little rest. And now we are going to pull our foot off the wall. Just put all of your focus on that hamstring. It's okay if it cramps. Sometimes it'll do that. And relax. And all right. So that is it for the sort of hip release and activation. And just looks like I've just done it in 15 minutes, which is cool because there's no reason not to do something that's 15 minutes. And yeah, I'll see you for the next one.